The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm Linda Gates, and I'll be your host for the next couple of episodes while Brooklyn is away for the next couple of days, as is Dr. Scott, sunning himself somewhere on a beach. However, I am here with my guest, Dr. Mark Bound, and today we will be answering a listener email from Peter, who lives in Tampa, Florida. Peter asks, Trump has released an executive order making English the official language of the United States, which seems rather silly. Can he do this? Why is he doing this? And could this lead to more presidential resolutions that further isolate us and move America toward a state of white Anglophiles only?
Well, that is a good question. What would you like me to take on first? Can he do this? And the answer is yes. He can do it. It's an executive order. Does it really mean anything? No, it's now not a law. It's basically just a proclamation made by the President of the United States that English is now the official language of the country. And as I say, there is no federal law being created that says that English is the first language. So you take it at face value. It's just a little bit more rhetoric. It is more meat for the base of his that likes to have things said that make them think that they're special, and anybody else that isn't speaking English is not special. That's basically all it's for.
Well, and the fact that it's not recognized by the federal law, so it doesn't make any difference.
Because there is no federal law.
Exactly. And there's a reason behind that. As a matter of fact, if you go back, you'll find that this was tried in the past. And it was the forefathers who said, no, we're not going to do this because of how we were created as a society in America. So it's never going to happen. However, it does create we can't
say it's never going to happen. Let's remember the Republicans control both houses of the Congress. Could they make up a law for this? Yeah, they could try. It'd be interesting to see how far it goes. It'd be interesting to see how it would stand the test of the court system. Sure. But I think it also does not take into account the history of the United States. And before the United States was the United States, when it was the 13 colonies, one of the difficulties that George Washington had commanding the Continental Army was that most of it spoke different languages. You had battalions that spoke German. You had battalions that spoke Polish, that spoke French. So, of course, you also had battalions that spoke Irish and Scottish. And if anybody's ever been to Scotland, even though they are speaking English, it is still rather difficult to understand exactly what's being said, as opposed to the British Army, who only had to speak with the Hessians who were speaking German. But the majority of their army was speaking English. So it was a difficulty for Washington and the Founding Fathers. It's also important for us to remember that what the Founding Fathers, and there's been a lot of great research done on this, what the Founding Fathers sounded like when they spoke. And of course, we don't have any recordings of George Washington or John Adams or any of the rest of them. But going back through documents, looking at how they wrote, we can say that they probably sounded more like the British of today than they sounded like Americans of today. So just the whole idea is just, as you say, it's silly. It's sort of like renaming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. It just makes that base think that they're important, that they're better than everybody else, and that it's, hey, let's feel yay us, boo everybody else, because that's nationalism. It's also very interesting and very ironic that the president to make English, or try to make and to put out this presidential executive order, is probably the president that has the worst command of the English language since George W. Bush. And George W. Bush you could excuse because he's a Texan. I mean, he talks like a Texan. So we could excuse poor George W. And he was kind of lovable, old George. But the fact is that Trump, who says, I have the best words. I don't know 5-year-olds that talk like that. I mean, this is the guy that is making English the national language, and he can't command it himself. So it just, again, it's just one of those ironic things.
Yeah, I would agree to that. So, you've already answered that question. Why is he doing this?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and again, it's just it's an amazing thing, and this is one of the things I think that disappoints me the most with the populace of the United States at this point in time. This is like the things that Trump is doing, making an executive order to rename the Gulf of Mexico, making English the official language. Somebody put in a bill in Congress that if we take over Greenland, we're going to make it red, white, and blue land. I mean, just stupid stuff like this. It's kind of like, and a lot of people that listen could probably understand this. It doesn't do anything whatsoever. It's kind of like going into your boss and saying, I need a raise. And your boss saying, gee, I can't give you a raise, but I'll give you a title. And hope that you feel really good about yourself because now you have a title. You probably don't have any more power than when you first walked in. None of that has changed. You're not getting any more money. None of that has changed. But I've given you a title. And that's basically what he's giving, the American people that are following him in this cult-like manner. And the fact that they're falling for it really supports the idea that this is a cult.
However, with a title also comes a perception. And enough people have that type of perception that could create unwarranted issues that don't need to be there. Like I'm looking at from my perspective in the employment law spectrum. Yeah, federally, this doesn't affect anything, and it really doesn't affect anything as far as employment law goes for employees, but it will affect businesses adversely, and it can subtly affect the entire country, really. If you look at all of our businesses and who predominantly work in these businesses, look around.
And you're right. It's a perception, and that's one of the things that I think is what Trump has been able to accomplish. If I'm going to give him credit for anything, he has elevated perception above reality. Normally, that's not the way. Usually, it works the other way around. Mm-hmm. Usually, we're talking reality trumps, not to put out a pun, but trumps perception. He has created an environment in this country where he is creating these perceptions that speak to what the people think they want, truly think they want, and made that the new reality. And I was actually looking the other day, I saw on one of the news feeds, a guy from Florida, Peter's from Tampa, and I believe, Peter, that this guy that was on the news is also from Florida. He voted for Trump. He voted for DeSantis. He voted Republican right down the line. And the other day, his wife was deported. Now, he was extremely upset, unless he planned it this way. You never know about these things. Maybe he planned it that way to get, to make the wife get deported. But the wife was deported and he was being interviewed. And he says, I don't understand. I thought it would happen to everybody else. Didn't expect it to happen to me. Well, I'm sorry, but you got what you paid for. You got what you deserved. You got what you voted for. It was against your best interest. They had another article on a veteran voted for Trump, showed pictures of him with all his Trump garb on and everything. And they closed down one of the VA centers that was close to him. And he was terribly upset. I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for you. This is what you voted for. But we always vote with the idea that it won't happen to me. It's that perception that this is going to happen to everybody else. And like I say, if there's one thing that we can give Trump a lot of credit for, it's elevating the fantasy of perception above the truth of reality.
Absolutely correct. And unfortunately, that just continues our divide.
And it not only continues it widens it.
Absolutely.
It perpetuates the divide that we're looking at here. I mean, that's really all there is to it.
And actually, that goes right into the last question that Peter has, and that is, could this lead to a more presidential resolutions that further isolate us and move America towards a state of white Anglophiles?
Absolutely.
Is that what we're looking at?
Absolutely. And here's the greatest fear you got to have. It starts with language. And there's a lot that could be said other than the fact, even beyond the fact that Trump has such a terrible command of the English language. I'm the first one to admit I speak 3 languages. I speak English, bad English, and New York.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way it is. But he doesn't even speak good New York. And his bad English is like almost Rhodes Scholar stuff. It's just that bad. And if we look around the world, most other countries are bilingual.
Yeah.
If you go to school in Germany, if you go to school in France or in Spain or many of these countries, the second language you learn is English. Now, we have these programs in the United States where in high school, most of us, do not become fluent in the language. We just take it for the 4 years or 3 years or whatever we have to take it for, so we get the credit so we get out of high school. But Americans seem to have this arrogance in the belief that we should all speak English. Mm-hmm. Now, I can say from experience, going over to Germany, if you go into a German pub and you at least attempt to speak the language, they will be your best friends forever. Because you're an American, they think we're arrogant when it comes to language, but if you made that effort, even if you screwed it up, they don't care. I mean, they'll laugh with you and all that, but they appreciate the effort. And for us, we expect everybody to speak fluent English, even though our president of the United States can't do so. So that's kind of a thing with the language. As far as being homogenous, as far as being Anglophile, here's my greatest fear about this whole thing. This time it's language. Next time it might be religion. Mm-hmm. What if he puts out a presidential decree that says Christianity is the official religion of the United States, which is totally contrary to what the founding fathers wanted? Making religion something part of a platform of the conservative party is totally contrary to what the originators of conservatism wanted. They wrote, and you could see this not only by the Germans, who really were some of the founders of conservatism, and in the Federalist Papers, the idea of including religion in the government was seen as being too divisive, being way too divisive. That's why they rejected the idea. That's why they never created an official religion. Let's also remember, under God, in the Pledge of Allegiance, wasn't put in until the late 1950s. Eisenhower put that in.
Oh.
Eisenhower put that in. So under God wasn't there before. So, I mean, the idea, we have been moving more and more toward this idea of, religion having an impact. And it's mostly because that those that are on the far religious right, just as my grandfather would say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They're the squeakiest wheel. So people just want to shut them up, so they give them whatever they can give them, like putting under God into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wait a minute. I thought isn't there something in the Constitution somewhere, you should know this, that's
thanks.
supposed to
separation of church and state.
Correct.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Right. Yes. That's the whole idea, is the separation of church and state.
So why are we allowing?
Well, we haven't allowed it, and let's remember something.
State.
There's and this is where it gets kind of controversial. Trump puts out an executive order, and we've talked about this before on this podcast. It doesn't mean really anything. It's like a big news flash. We've had guests on here before who have talked about executive orders and what they really do mean. And the fact is they don't mean anything. They don't change anything. There's no law. Okay. The Congress has to make a law. So again, Congress could try to make a law. The courts get a hold of it. Understanding the Constitution as it states there will be a separation between church and state, it'll probably be struck down.
Got it.
So I think we put too much into these executive orders, thinking that there's some sort of binding or they're lawful or they make a new law. And again, where your point where you were talking about businesses about this English language thing. The perception that it might be might make businesses act proactively when they don't have to. And they may be acting proactively incorrectly.
Correct.
Because this could be looked at as discrimination once it's struck down.
Correct.
So they could be, again, we've always said everybody thinks on the short term, nobody thinks on the long term. And the fact is that it's very possible that, you're right. A business might say, listen, to work here, you've got to be able to speak English. Boom, done. Now, are there some businesses that are allowed to do that? Of course there are. But, a general factory, usually it's not a requirement. But if you're teaching English at a school, yeah, you probably need to speak English. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. It's not a law, but it's the perceptions. And as I say, this is where Trump excels. Not his English, not his command of the language, but in his ability to make the rest of the world truly believe that perception is a reality when it's not.
Yep.
So I think we've answered that, Peter. Hopefully.
Yep. Looks like we have.
I think I've beaten up on Trump's English, his poor English enough.
I do want to make a little bit of a distinction, and when you're talking about his English, about Trump's bad English, and when we're talking about making English the national language everywhere and what that perception means. Trump only knows English. He doesn't know any other language. And yeah, the English that he does know is rather lacking. However, what we are talking about are people that English is their second or third or fourth language, and the perception of what that could create as far as a subtle form of discrimination and a justification for that discrimination. That's the real concern here. Yes, it's just a perception, but and yes, legally, those companies and those people are going to get in a lot of trouble eventually because it's against the law. People don't understand that, and that's why these discussions are so crucial, because without them, the real people out there, the real public, just truly don't understand how things really work.
Well,
and so they,
you're right. You're absolutely right. And the fact is that if you're really happy about this, and I'm taking from Peter, who said it was silly. He's not really happy about this. I feel exactly the way he does. This is silly. I think you feel this way. It's silly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you feel really good about this, if this is really that important to you, you need to have something to make yourself feel good about yourself and put other people down and separate yourself. If you need that, I'm sorry. I think it's time to get a life. Yeah. I mean, a real life. And the fact is that this is where the problem lies. Those people who need this affirmation, who need to be told you're special and you're better than that person over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak for Scott. I can speak for Brooklyn. I can speak for you, I believe, Linda, that, we're highly educated people, but we don't think we're better than anybody else.
Absolutely not.
We don't think we're better than anybody else. And the fact is that these are people that, for whatever reason, maybe their lives are really, I don't know. I really don't know. But they seem to need this to affirm their place in society. And the fact is that they shouldn't need it. You want the American dream? The American dream is you go out, you do your best, and you're a responsible citizen, and you take care of others. Other than that, I mean, you don't have to be the most educated person in the world. You don't have to be the person with the best words in the world. You don't have to be anything like that. But if you're just a good person, you've probably accomplished what you really should be wanting to accomplish, and you don't have to put somebody else down to do it.
Absolutely. It doesn't cost anything to be kind.
Nope. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind.
Absolutely.
Doctor Who, the 12th Doctor.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode. We both want to thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!